Greetings! In this video, we will review object mode and component mode in preparation for our spaceship modeling project. I'll begin by using the Select tool. Q key on the keyboard is your shortcut for the Select tool, and we can make a selection. When we see this green outline, we know that we have our geometry selected as an object, and our transform tools will work directly on that object. We can rotate, we can move, and we can scale. So green indicates that we have an object-based selection. Now there are three ways that we can switch between object mode and component mode. The most often used way is to right-click the object, and we can choose edges, faces, or vertices. Let's choose vertex. Now I can draw a bounding box around those vertices there, and now when we use our transform tools, they're affecting only the selected components, in this case these vertices. If we wanted to make that wider, let's say for instance, I'll go ahead and hit the Z key to undo. Now to get back to the object mode from component mode, when we're using the right click method, we'll right click and come to 2 o'clock object mode. The other most common way is to have your modeling toolkit open, and you can see here we have object mode. We can click here and we'll see the vertices, and it highlights the last vertices selected. We have edges. We can pick edges. Let's say we pick this edge here, and we could transform that component, right? We could raise that up or pull it down. And we have faces, third one out. And so we could pick a face. I'll shift select a second face, and we could raise that up as a component. And then switching back to object mode is as simple as clicking that first icon there, and now we're back to object. The third way is to come up and manually switch between object mode and component mode. So sometimes if these tools get stuck or you're having a difficult selection, you may want to just manually come up and switch object to component back and forth. And sometimes if you're stuck, this will override your right click or override this set of tools, and you can get back into object mode so that your transform tools behave predictably. A few things to note when we're making selections in component mode. Let's pick these vertexes here. I can use the control key to deselect. Let's say you drew a bounding box selection and you accidentally selected things you didn't want. I'll hit the Q key to make that easier to see. And we'll hit the 4 key so that we can see we've got some vertices here that we didn't want selected. I'll hold down the control key and I can draw a bounding box, and that will deselect. And we'll hit the 5 key just to get back into shaded mode, and we're back in business with our ability to transform those selected components. Now, if we were, let's say we wanted to elongate these jet engines, I could shift select both of those, and we could use the move tool and we could make those longer. Let's say we wanted to make these longer in the rear direction, right? So we can move components, and if we wanted to shift select on both sides, that would be an option. I'll hit the Z key to undo that. But if we were going to rotate, let's say we wanted to rotate or scale. Let's say we wanted to scale these down a little bit. If I grab both sets of these jets and we go to scale them down, note that they're scaling in world space. They're scaling towards each other. I'm imagining that I just wanted to make the front of both of these jets a little bit smaller. This is a scenario where we want to use the symmetry. So if I just select those all by itself, I'll hit the Q key, and I'm imagining that I want to scale that down to a fine point, and I want the same thing to happen onto the other side. We'll turn symmetry on. So I'm going to hit undo, and I'll hit the Q key, and we'll come up to symmetry. You have symmetry here, and if your modeling toolkit's available to you here as well. And so we could choose object X, and you can see that they're changing in both of those fields. And now when I scale just on this side, let's say we're scaling it down, it is mirroring across that object X axis, right? If we wanted to, let's say for instance, scale that down or scale them up, right? We're doing it just on one side, and it's mirroring over because we have symmetry on. Now, it's often times the case as a beginner, you'll forget that it's on, and then later you want to make some type of selection and you'll forget that it's on. So just take a look up here and make sure that symmetry's off if you're trying to make direct selections. So quick review. When we see green, we know that we're in object mode. When we right-click and choose a component, let's say vertices, it's outlined in light blue and our components are in pink. We can switch back and forth between object mode and component mode by right-clicking. We can do that here in our modeling toolkit. Here is the object mode icon. Here are vertices, edges, and faces. We'll come back to object mode. And if you ever get stuck, you can manually switch between component mode and object mode here. When you're making selections, you can select directly, and if you want something to mirror over the axis, you can use the symmetry. We'll turn that on here, and you see that it automatically makes a mirror selection across that axis. And the final thing that we talked about, if we're making a selection, let's say we went to select these three and we accidentally got some other selections, I'll hit the 4 key, and we'll use the control key to make a bounding box selection across the components that we didn't want selected. And now we are left with just the components that we have selected. Object mode, component mode, transforming your object, transforming your components, using that in conjunction with symmetry, and then also using the control key to deselect a selection. Those are the review that we need to get started on our modeling of our spaceship. Okay, questions in the tech discussion forum. Have a good one.